Whew. Relax now, boys. Take a big deep breath. Let it out. The teller is here. I know a lot of you guys were anticipating this episode. A lot of you guys got a lot of profits to work with after UFC Vegas 85. And you're looking to take those profits and double them up with this card. I get it completely. If you guys want to see how I did, check out the recap of UFC Vegas 85 posted here at the channel. I can't tell you right now because I am recording this the day before the card took place, but I'm feeling pretty good about my spots. Time will tell there. Besides that, you guys know I've been talking about a lot of upgrades coming to this channel. You haven't seen any of it yet. I know, I'm sorry I'm taking a little longer than I wanted to, but I will let you guys know when those upgrades come into place. But you will see a video posted this week that will be new. It'll be a new type of video that I haven't done in the past, and that will be something that you guys will see weekly. It'll be a little bit different than these full card videos, which you still will have these, of course, for every fight card, but just you guys are going to start to see some stuff unraveling here, okay? Before we jump into the first fight, I just want to ask you guys very kindly if you could hit that like button, and if you guys could subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and catch me on all my social media on Instagram at MMAFortuneTeller_, on Twitter at the MMA Teller. All right, guys, and then you know, we have a fight card here. That's an exciting one in my opinion. Not a lot of huge names, but I am very excited about the potential that Joseph Pyfer has. If you guys haven't listened to him on the Joe Rogan Experience, I highly recommend it. I have really started to gravitate towards him just hearing his whole story. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get to that fight, but if you guys already kind of know the situation, man, he really had a tough upbringing. You know, you hear Sean Strickland talking about his upbringing, which I'm sure it was brutal, but I mean, Joseph Pyfer sounds even worse to me, and you don't see him really talking about it that much. A great dude and a guy that has some serious potential. All right, so excited for him to get that ranked number next to his name after a W here against the number 10th ranked middleweight fighter in Jack Hermansson. And again, just some exciting fights all throughout the card. I won't bore you too much just previewing the card. I think it's that time. Let's just jump into the first fight.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA Fortune Teller. Yeah.
The MMA Fortune Teller.
The teller.
Kicking the card off, we head over to the lightweight division, where we have one of 3 fighters on this fight card who are making their UFC debuts. I'm talking about Bolaji Oki, who just had a huge victory on Dana White's Contender Series. He was facing the stiffest test of his career at the time, and he passed with flying colors, got that finish there over Salvador. He's now taken on Damir Hadžović, a fighter that I have turned my back on quite a while ago. Not that high in him at all these days, but you still have to say this is a step up in competition when you take into consideration that Damir has been fighting in the UFC for some time. He's been in there with some tough fighters, and just with the experience, you know, has 21 professional fights compared to the 9 professional fights of Oki. But you know, the Zulu Warrior and Oki, this is a fighter fighting out of Belgium, and this is a dude that I've been getting messages about for a while. Even before he had his fight on Dana White's Contender Series, I had people from Belgium messaging me, asking me what I thought about him, and if I've heard about him, and the potential that he has. And again, he definitely delivered on the show. This guy has big time knockout power. That's what he does. He's a fight finisher, has some nasty striking. I loved the way that he was working the body in that fight that he had on DWCS, where he had that victory there. Again, over a fighter that was actually, you know, on the regional scene and whatnot, decently respected in Dylan Salvador. He's a stud athlete, and he has some potential. He actually bounced back with the victory in his next fight. In that fight, where Oki had the finish in just 2 minutes and 46 seconds, you know, he was going up top and then setting the body up, ripping the body as he got that finish. And that's something, you know, I haven't talked about that as much these days, but that's something I used to always preach about is, well, you know, just not understanding why fighters don't go to the body more. So it's always wide open. I mean, maybe not always, but you see it open many of times, and some of these fighters just continue to headhunt. And I think that Oki will be mixing things up here. Now, stylistically, I think that this fight favors Oki as far as a UFC debut fight against a veteran, and the fact that Damir hasn't really showed me much with the grappling. Now, that may be his one avenue to potentially pull the upset here. If he could kind of make things ugly and slip in some grappling, maybe he tests Oki there. And, you know, we really haven't seen too much from Oki there. I think that's Hadžović's one recipe for victory. But again, hasn't impressed me with the grappling over the years. I'll never forget what Renato Moicano did to him. That was one of the most comical fights I've ever seen, where he just ripped him down, submitted him in 44 seconds, and then Damir's screaming, rematch, rematch. I mean, how comical is that? I mean, when he just got dismantled like that, and Renato was saying he wanted to fight longer, and Damir goes, well, then you shouldn't have subbed me. That was just a very comical situation. Just lost to Mark Diakese due to Diakese's grappling. You take a look at his victories as well. None of them are notable, man. You're talking about Yancy Medeiros, Marco Polo Reyes, a split decision over Nick Hine. His big victory was that knockout that he had over Marcin Held, and that was at the time where Held still had more respect in the game. He was kind of an up-and-coming prospect in the UFC, a fighter that was... people were really high in his grappling. He was kind of a one-dimensional fighter. That's really all Held has ever been, is a one-dimensional fighter, even as he tried to work his striking throughout the years. And that victory just didn't play out as good as maybe some of us thought it was at the time. And that was a point in time, though, where people were high on Damir, and he's kind of lived off that. Losses to Alan Patry, Christos Giagos, Renato Moicano, Mark Diakese. This will probably be the last time that we see Damir. If he loses, it will be the last time. But so this probably will be the last time that we see Damir in the octagon, as I do have Oki striking it out with Hadžović. I think Hadžović plays that game with him enough, and Hadžović can be a little dangerous there, but Oki will be the more dangerous fighter. He has almost a 3-inch reach advantage, has a very long wingspan. He's just a more rangy fighter. He's a dangerous striker, and I think that he wins this fight. Now, the question is, does he get the knockout? Because Damir has been very durable. He's only been knocked out once in his career. We talked about the sub that he had against Moicano, but I don't see a sub playing out like that in this fight. So out of 21 fights, he's only been knocked out. So it's hard to say that Damir is just going to go out there and get starched. He's a decently tough guy. If you're targeting an under 4 this fight, because Damir has knockout power as well, take a look at his 14 victories. He has 5 knockouts. He's somewhat of a fight finisher, a couple subs there as well. Maybe you're targeting the under. I think these guys are going to clash. And I'm going to say that Oki gets that knockout to kick the card off. How about that? I will say he gets that knockout. Damir's 37 years old. He's been tough, but the age is catching up to him. The durability should start to dip a little bit. Oki opens up as a -290 on my bookie, and he's now a -300. So we have very minuscule movement, but it's trending towards his way. So people like this dude, man. He's a young, promising fighter, but has a lot more to prove in the game. But Damir Hadžović isn't really, a big test for a UFC debut type of fight. I think Oki should pass this test. This should be a fun one in the light heavyweight division. We got Zach Pauga taking on Bogdan Guskov. Guskov, a fighter that just made his UFC debut in his last fight. A lot of people were intrigued to see how he was going to perform. The UFC throws him in there with this serious test in Volkan Ozdemir, and Bogdan fell flat on his face, was subbed very quickly in that fight, showing that he does have a chink in his armor there. Now, in this matchup here, I don't think that Pauga is necessarily the biggest threat to get a takedown and go the grappling route. So that's one thing that Bogdan has going good for him in this matchup here. This should be a fight that stays on the feet, where Guskov can try to show us that striking that he's been using throughout his career before coming into the UFC. He has a nasty highlight reel. Keep in mind, it's against very low competition fighters, but he has one of the coldest knockouts I've ever seen. You got to pull it up on YouTube, where he got this bad Eastern European or whatever she is type of reporter. She's by the side of the cage and she's talking, and you see the fight just kicking off behind her. I mean, literally right behind her. She's up against the cage, and then Guskov lands the knockout on cue as the camera starts to tilt in and zoom in on the fight. It was pretty bad. But again, against low-level competition. Do I need to remind you guys that Zach Pauga was just knocked out against Muhammad Usman, and even greener Usman that we've seen as of recently, right? That fight took place back in 2022, about 2 years ago or whatnot. Usman caught him with a nasty, sloppy, wild strike there and caught him. So, I mean, the chin has been tested. You can't sit here and tell me that a guy like Guskov can't land a knockout in this fight. I think there's some potential for that. I'm gonna take Guskov here to get that first UFC victory, and I'll explain why a little bit more so as well. Zach Pauga, a fighter that really has a lot of low-level competition scattered throughout his limited amount of fights as well. So even though we're questioning Guskov's padded record, you could say the same thing about Pauga for the most part. He had that victory against Marcus Perez, which some of you guys may respect him out of the limited amount of W's here. But if you remember, man, Marcus Perez, take a look at his resume now, man. When he was in the UFC, he was losing to guys like Dalcheling and Bula, who could never get a win after that. Losses to Wellington Turman, who's not really looking as good these days. You know, there's some questionable losses throughout Eric Perez's career. So, I mean, I'm not really, or excuse me, Marcus Perez's career. So, I mean, that's the one victory that he had that kind of stood out. Besides that, I mean, he just went to a decision with Jordan Wright. Everyone else is knocking Jordan Wright out. He couldn't do that. Had the last victory before that over Jordan Heiderman. That one doesn't stand out to me too much. I know he had the knockout there, but I mean, I think that this is a fight that could go either way. And on a fight card where there's not a lot of spots to go in on underdogs, I'm going to go in on Bogdan Guskov here. I think he's one of the more live dogs on this card. 31 years old, a lot more room for growth compared to Pauga, who's creeping up on 36 years old. And I know that he can still grow as a fighter because he doesn't have a lot of pro experience. I think we'll see him grow a little bit more before his body really starts to decline. I think he's still okay at this weight division. 35 is not that old. But give me Bogdan, man. I hope Bogdan lands a nice shot and gets to finish. And I would love to see him be a new addition to this division. I would hope that he could actually be one of those guys, kind of reminiscent to when we saw, I'm not saying that he's going to come near the level of a Yuri Prochazka, but when you saw Yuri come into the UFC just as a guy that no one was that familiar with, you know, had a decent resume outside the UFC and came in and it translated right into being a fun fighter that was added to the division. I want to see Bogdan be that type of fighter because I think if he is anything like we thought he could have been, we could see him getting some knockouts in this division and it could be fun to watch, but we'll have a much better idea of who he is after this fight. That's for sure. But sitting here right now, hard to say. Opened up as a plus 130 dog on my bookie. Slight action coming his way. He's now a plus 120 dog. All right, so the line trending his way. Maybe we see this line start to even out a little bit more so. So yeah, I do like the value on the underdog line of Guskov's. Even if this line went towards a pick'em line, I'm still favoring Guskov there. So some decent value there, but I don't pick him with an extreme amount of confidence, man. There's some major question marks in regards to this fight. Sticking up at the light heavyweight division, we got Devin, the Brown Bear Clark, taking on Marcin Prachnio. Marcin Prachnio is a fighter. I've been very surprised throughout the last couple of years of some of the performance he was able to pull out of his ass there. This is a guy that I really thought was going to start to be starched time after time again. It would have been cut by the UFC, but he snuck out a couple of victories, you know, one over William Knight, which we now have a little bit more of a clearer lens as we look into that fight. William Knight was a head case. You know, victories over Isaac Villanueva, that is what it is. Villanueva was never a UFC caliber fighter. The Khalil Roundtree victory, that was one that was a little weird, man. And that kind of shows you the head case that Khalil could be at times, because Khalil should have dismantled him and should have finished him. So that was that one sneaky victory. You know, at that time, that was the fight that really surprised me, coming off 3 knockout losses in a row. Okay, so think about that. At that time, coming off 3 knockout losses in a row, even though throughout his career, he's only been knocked out 4 times within 23 professional fights. So there was just some type of, it seems like there was some type of situation going on around that time where his defense was very lacking. And somehow, as of recently, he's been surviving in these fights. But do understand that Devin Clark, even though he's a fighter that doesn't have a lot of knockouts, just 3 knockouts, he does throw some heavy shots with his hands. He puts a lot into his shots. And if Prachnio is slipping, we could easily see a knockout in this spot. I could see that. Now, as this fight goes to the later rounds, Prachnio is a fighter, man, that he's active. He's an active fighter. He's landing 5.39 strikes per minute compared to Devin Clark's 2.99. So we may see Devin Clark kind of trying to use the wrestling and pushing Prachnio up against the cage and whatnot. And I could see Prachnio being a little bit more active than him. So if this fight does go to the judges' scorecards, I worry about that a little bit for Clark's sake. Clark is a fighter too that we've seen kind of slow down at times. You know, I like Clark. I hope he gets this W here. I like him. I like how he had his pops in his corner that one time. His dad seems like a real OG. You know, he was just talking all types of craziness in the corner, just trying to motivate his son, and I really enjoyed watching that. But, you know, the way I'm looking at this fight right now is Clark is going to have some success with his grappling. He's going to need to mix things up. Cardio is going to have to be on point. He's going to have to continue to push this pace. for 15 minutes, and he's going to have to step up the activity a little bit. Otherwise, this fight could slip through his hands. One other thing I do want to note is that Devin Clark, even though he's taken his fair share of losses, if you take a look at the level of competition that he's lost to, Kennedy and Shekawu, Azamat Mirzakhanov, Ian Kutilaba, Anthony Smith, Ryan Spann, Alexander Rakic, Jan Blachowicz, remember that one way back in the day? He got caught with that sub there. All the way back to, losing to Alex Nicholson. I think that was Alex Nicholson's only victory in the UFC. But Alex Nicholson, a tough dude, doing the bare knuckle thing these days. I met him at a UFC event. Cool dude. And, so just understand that a lot of his losses were to high-level opponents, and he snuck in some nice victories through his career, right? Has a victory over Alonzo Menefield, Darko Stosic, the William Knight one. We're not talking about that. We already mentioned him. I mean, that guy is a head case. Both these guys have victories over him. The Da Un Jung victory, as of recently, that's a big one there. Da Un Jung is a talented fighter. So, I do think that this fight is a little closer than the line says, as Devin Clark's a -190 favorite. But, so the value, I do have it being on the dog here in Prachnio, and I think he could potentially use that activity to sneak out a decision here. But that being said, I think Clark is the better fighter. And if he's on his P's and Q's and he shows up and does what he needs to do here, like I said, coming in good shape, pushing the pace, he can use his wrestling and just mix things up, and he should be a step ahead. And again, don't sleep on his power. I know he only has 3 knockouts, but this is a guy that does throw a lot into his shots, and Prachnio is a guy that we've seen defensively look very horrible at times, even though he's been working on it. So give me Devin Clark here. I'll edge the decision, but with a possible knockout happening here, I'll say Devin Clark may get a knockout in this fight, but I'm leaning more towards over a decision for Clark, with him wasting some time pushing Prachnio up against the cage, and we see them kind of stifling each other a little bit here and there. Over to the bantamweight division, where we have the Peruvian Daniel Marcos taking on Aoriqileng Aori. Daniel Marcos, this is a fighter that's coming off a little bit of a disappointing performance. Many people thought that he should have took that L against Davey Grant. I'll be honest with you guys. I thought the fight could have went either way. That was an official play of mine. I was at Wing House enjoying myself. Had a big old brewski in front of me. Had a nice view in front of me, if you guys know about the Wing House. And, middle of the day, that was a card that took place early in the day. And that was one when I got the nod. I was extremely happy. You guys know those fights, you just don't think it's going to go your way, and it goes your way, and you're somewhat surprised. Now, Marcos had his moments. Davey Grant did open up. There was some blood upon his face. I think that helped lean the judges towards Marcos's way. But Marcos was extremely hesitant throughout that entire fight. And I don't know what was going on through his head there. Now, we know Davey Grant is a dangerous fighter, hence the name, and he has that power. So maybe Marcos was just a little hesitant to engage too much. Thought maybe he was just a little off on the day. But when he has looked good in the past, man, he mixed up his striking very well. He's very accurate. I like the way he works in the leg kicks, the calf kicks, and whatnot. And, this is a fight that I think that he should handle, all right? Because Aoriqileng Aori, although he's had his moments in the cage as well, this is a guy that's fought against very low-level competition. I mean, take a look at the victories that he's had inside the UFC. I mean, it's about as bad as it gets. Victories as of recently over Johnny Munoz, a one-trick pony, a jiu-jitsu guy, Jay Perrin, fighter that should never have been fighting in the UFC, Cameron Else, a guy that should never have been fighting in the UFC. All right, so you understand that he has not one legitimate win in the UFC thus far, and got knocked out against Ayman Sahabi. So there's some question marks on the chin there. That wasn't that long ago. That was at the end of 2023, right? Not long ago at all. Just took place in October, a few months back. I'm sorry, that was in June. Excuse me, June, middle of the year still. Wasn't that long ago. Remember the Cody Durden fight where he started a little hot and then slowed down significantly as that fight went down and Durden took over that fight? I just think that we could see something similar as this fight probably goes to the judges' scorecards. I'm going to lean this fight going to the judges' scorecards. I can't really rely on Marcos to push the pace and look to get a finish after the performance he just had. While still understanding that he did have a nice little finish before that against Simon Oliveira. But decision victories in 2 of his last 3 victories under the UFC banner, the Brandon Lewis and the Davey Grant fight. I think Marcos will probably be measured throughout this fight and just be a step ahead of Aori. So I'm taking Daniel Marcos to just edge out a decision victory in this fight. He opened up as a -190 on my bookie, and he's now a -220. The line is trending his way, and I'm not crazy about that line. I'm not crazy about the -220 line. Minus 190. I mean, if you're trying to talk me into taking that, I mean, maybe you could talk me into that. I would maybe like it more around like minus 165, 170, if I'm being honest. I don't like the performance Marcos just had. He was very hesitant. And, you know, you look at some of the numbers that these guys have posted throughout their career. Aoriqileng is a fighter that is active, right? He lands 5.31 strikes per minute. He's been a very active fighter, but we talked about the low-level competition, but still, he might be active in this fight, and this could be a fight that potentially plays out close, and I don't want to tag like that. I don't want to tag like that next to Marcos' name, so value on Aoriqileng for me, but where it is now, creeping it towards the mid minus 200 range, but I will say I have Marcos winning a decision here. In the welterweight division, Jeremiah Wells looking to redeem himself after such a frustrating loss that he just took against Carlston Harris. He's now taking on Max Griffin. I had an official play on Wells that night, and that was one of the more frustrating losses I took last year. Jeremiah Wells up on the scorecards, bullying Harris in that fight, and just kind of had a mental lapse in that fight. You know, he shouldn't have been pushing for the takedown, should have slowed things down. You know, he did start to gas out in that third round, and it was actually him that was pushing the pace and put his neck out there to be subbed. It was some low-level IQ activities from Wells. So that's something that you have to be a little bit concerned about. Now, the good thing for him here is that Max Griffin is not really a submission threat, and Jeremiah Wells is a fighter that is very, very tough and durable, and he's hard to get a finish via strike. So even if this fight gets a little crazy and hairy late, I think that there's more likelihood that Wells can survive in the striking realm here with Griffin. But I don't want to see him sticking his neck out there against guys that can fish for a sub. And Carlston Harris, he should have known. Carlston Harris has some nasty subs in his arsenal. Before that, victories over Matthew Semmelsberger, Court McGee, Blood Diamond, Warley, Alves. I would say the Alves debut fight for him was really the standout victory. But again, just note, even in that loss that he just took against Carlston Harris, who is a good fighter, we saw that he's a high-level fighter, man. He was bullying Harris in there. He goes forward. He has just that Terminator type of style, and I enjoy watching him perform. And I think that he is going to be the bully in this matchup against Griffin. Griffin has underrated striking, or maybe not even underrated. Maybe some of you guys know about him. I mean, he has some pop, has a knockout over Kenan Song, I believe, has a knockout over a couple other guys. He's rangy. He'll have a little bit of a reach advantage here. But Wells is a good striker. You know, I think he's actually a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and people talk about his grappling skills. But obviously, when he's in the cage, I mean, this is a guy that has big-time knockout power. And defensively, he's pretty sound. And I think that he should get the better of Griffin in the striking department. 5 knockouts out of his 12 victories, 7 knockouts out of Max Griffin's 19 victories. Both these guys have shown, those numbers aren't staggering, but both these guys have shown they have serious power, and I'm excited to see how they trade on the feet, and I just lean towards Wells' way, and I think that Wells can even change levels a little bit and mix things up. Again, just has to be on his P's and Q's, not sticking his neck anywhere. Max Griffin just not that much of a threat there, like I said, though. Now, these numbers kind of surprised me. Wells landing 2.52 strikes per minute while only absorbing 1.14. That's impressive defensively. Like I said, his defensive skills are good. But offensively, it surprised me because when I watch his fights, I mean, this is a guy that just marches forward and really looks to just do damage throughout the fight. So those numbers kind of surprised me. Griffin's really didn't surprise me, kind of just about average. He's a decently active guy. This should be a fun fight. I got to lean Wells' way, all right? I like this dude. You guys know I'm a fan of his fighting style. I've talked to him before through IG messaging. He actually messaged me after that loss. I kind of made a little funny video, and he messaged me a little something there, kind of laughing about it. So he's a good sport as well. And I'm hoping, and I'm thinking he bounces back in the win column. And the age, obviously, that doesn't really discourage me because with him being 37, coming off that loss, because Max Griffin's 38 years old also, even though, I don't know, he's got some good genes. I see him on IG smoking blunts and he's chilling. He looks like he's like 30 years old. So, you know, he does got some good genes. He takes good care of himself. Give me Jeremiah Wells, though. Does Jeremiah Wells get that knockout? This is another one that's hard to say because I love the way he looks to finish the fight as soon as the bell rings. But Max Griffin is a fighter that's only been finished 2 times in 39 professional fights. Excuse me, 29 professional fights. Still a lot. Almost 30 pro fights. Max Griffin's only been finished twice. Not really banking on that. I'm not going to sit here and bank on a finish. I got Jeremiah Wells winning a decision. Hopefully he learned from his last fight. and slows the pace down when he's already up in the scorecards. So Jeremiah Wells right now is a -210 on my book. He opened up as a -220. It hit -230 and then dips back the other way. A little interesting there. You know, that line, it's not horrible. And I'm leaning more towards being patient with this line and seeing if you can grab Wells at -180, 190. I think that would be nice. Hopefully that action continues to come in on Max Griffin. That's how I'm looking at it. I think Wells shows up. In the women's strawweight division, we got Loma, Lookboonmee taking on Bruna, Brazil. Two solid strikers here. And when I say solid strikers, I want to more point that towards Loma's way because I'm a big fan of her striking background. A 9-time Muay Thai champion. In women's mixed martial arts, we don't typically see high caliber striking, and I think you can classify her as that type of fighter. And she's a fighter that's been working on her all-around game, so you got to respect that. She's only 28 years old. She's putting a lot of work in over at Tiger Muay Thai. She's trained at the MMA lab. So this is a girl that's grinding. She's trying to work on her grappling and whatnot, and to even out her skills. And she's a little undersized at times, but she's a tough cookie there. Bruna, Brazil, I mean, I'll always have a grudge against this chick for her performance against Denise Gomes in her UFC debut. And, you know, looking back on what was going on with that fight, it's so much more transparent. I mean, she came in to the UFC off of one of the most impressive women's mixed martial art knockouts that we saw in DWCS, right? When she had that knockout over Marnik Mann. When you now look at who Marnik Mann is and how defensively flawed she is, and she had another opportunity to fight on DWCS, and she was pieced apart horribly as her mom watched in the crowd. It was tough to watch, but you know, you now understand that she just performed. She delivered in that matchup, but all in all, I'm not nearly as high, of course, as I was after that fight against Denise Gomes. She froze up. She was very stiff. The moment got to her. I also do believe that she's a type of fighter that has, I guess you would say, anxiety. She's not the most mentally tough, all right? And some of that information kind of leaked out when she had her debut. I think that she talked about the fact that she was very nervous going into that fight, and we saw it. She was stiff. Her body wasn't reacting the way it should have. And how can you trust her to deliver as she has bigger and bigger fights, right? Where there's a lot more energy going into these matchups. I mean, the fight experience will help her, but she still is that type of chick. On the other hand, Loma, she ain't gonna freeze up. This is a girl that has sparred and has had so many fights throughout the years. You know how Muay Thai is, man. They're fighting every week, and she's just not gonna let the moment get to her. So Bruna, Brazil bounces back with that victory over Shauna Bannon, and Shauna Bannon's really not all that. So I'm still not really buying into Bruna, Brazil, to be honest. She has some ability, but I think that Loma will be more fluid with her movement, and I'll even favor her with the striking, even though Bruna's going to have that nice little reach advantage. She's the more rangy fighter, but again, Loma's a fighter that is going to be undersized against a lot of fighters. It just is what it is. She's very short, but she knows how to work her way into the inside, and she knows how to strike. All right, she has a legitimate Muay Thai background. She's been getting the job done left and right as of recently. Losses to Lupi Godinez, went to a decision there. That's very respectable. Lupi's been destroying girls. So, has a victory over Denise Gomes, who Gomes just went out there and beat Bruna, Brazil. Little fighter math there. A loss to Angela Hill. Angela Hill, a very respectable opponent. All right, so, you know, she's been doing her things. Now, I will say this. A lot of her victories besides the Gomes fight, a little bit lower level type of fighters, Elise Reed, Sam Hughes, Jinyu Frey. I understand that. But I think that Loma will start to get some victories over more respectable names over the next couple of years here. Again, take note, still just 28 years old. By the time she's 31, 32, I think that she'll really come around. And I think that she'll get the job done here against Bruna. I think there's potential that she even gets a knockout. If Bruna freezes up a little bit and is tight, I could see Loma maybe touching that chin. All right. I mean, it's definitely possible. She's a very accurate striker. I wouldn't bank on that, though. I wouldn't bank on that. It's a women's fight in the strawweight division. Loma most likely will just kind of edge Bruna out, I believe. And just don't be surprised if she changes levels too. Loma's been getting feisty, just working on her overall game. Give me Loma Lookboonmee to win a decision most likely. She opened up as a -280 favorite. She's now a -240, the line trending the other way. And it's understandable because in a fight like this, she shouldn't be almost near a 3-1 favorite. That line's way off. Bruna still has that range, you know, that reach advantage and all that. And she does, when she's on point, she does have some nasty strikes that she could pull out of her arsenal, and this is a fight that could potentially play out closely. You guys know that it's a strawweight fight, over on the women's side of things, and this is a fight that could be a little bit tit for tat, and you could be stressing out. So why would you be paying a 3-1 odds on the fight like that? So obviously not. I would like Loma if I was taking her, to be quite honest. I think the value's on Bruna until I can catch a line next to Loma's name in the higher -100s. Like I'm talking -190. Okay, so obviously I don't like where the line is, and we'll see how that line continues to trend. Another debuting fighter here, fight taking place in the welterweight division. Carlos Prates comes off a huge victory where he was a main event on one of those Dana White's Contender Series weeks, defeated a high caliber fighter, especially considering for that show, and Mitch Ramirez. Mitch Ramirez, I've had the pleasure to chat it up with him a bit. If you remember his backstory, got pushed out of the Ultimate Fighter, but got that opportunity there. He's a tough dude, and he's a fighter that we will see fighting in the UFC. And again, I talked extensively with him on IG as that whole thing took place, and he's a solid dude. And I do hold the victory that Carlos had there in high regard. Now, and that's important, right? Because he's taking on Trevin Giles. Trevin Giles has been fighting in the UFC for some time now, dating back to his UFC debut that took place all the way back in 2017, right? So you definitely have to understand that the experience edge is going to go Giles' way. And he's been into some tough fights too. You remember the James Krause fight, a lot of tit for tat going on. I mean, he's dug deep before. He's a well-rounded fighter. He has grappling in his back pocket. He could strike a little bit. But the grappling is really going to be the key for Trevin Giles here, because I just don't think that he's going to want to strike it out with Carlos Prates. This dude is an absolute fight finisher. He's going to have the reach advantage here. He's very rangy, fighting out of the southpaw stance. I mean, we saw how dangerous he was standing against Mitch Ramirez. And, even though, in that fight, Mitch Ramirez was able to withstand all the onslaught in the first round, we saw that it was just starting to just wilt at him, man, and just start to really take a little bit something out of him. And if you understand and you know how tough and durable Mitch Ramirez is, it's even that much more impressive. And after that victory, he had about what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 finishes in a row there. One of those was a kickboxing match as well, which he does have some pro kickboxing experience. This dude is the truth. Now, from what I'm seeing and from what I've been digging around, trying to do some research, I think that he actually has a little bit of grappling. Like he's not completely one-dimensional, but he needs to be tested against guys at a higher level, and we have to see him pass that test before we really know that. So again, circling back to how what we talked about when we started talking about this fight, Giles will need to change levels. I don't think that he's going to want to stand around and play that game of Prates. Also, take into consideration, Giles was just knocked out recently against Michael Morales. Funny enough, a big-time prospect at the time, right, coming up, a guy that has a lot of potential, a very long-framed stud athlete, similar to Prates, was knocked out in that fight, was knocked out against the current champ, Dricus du Plessis back then. All right, so we've seen him finished, right? And then in his last fight, too, dropped the ball against Gabriel Bonfim and was submitted there as well in the first round. So, yeah, I'm going to cut to the chase here, man. I think this dude Prates is the truth, and I think that he's going to find the mark in this fight. I think that Giles is going to give him an opportunity. Giles sometimes is a fighter that, like I said, that's willing to go to war, and I think that they'll exchange, and Prates will land some devastating strikes, and we'll get the finish on Giles. I'm thinking first or second round knockout a little bit earlier on in the fight, and then we will see what's next for him. Prates still has much more to prove, of course, and I do want to note, even though I was pointing out the experience edge going towards Giles' way, and I still do believe that. But just understand that Prates actually has more pro fights than Giles, but Giles fighting in the octagon against higher level competition, even engaging in wars against high level fighters, I do believe that experience edge still goes to him. Just understand that Prates, he's the type of fighter that should translate right into the UFC perfectly with the kickboxing background, having a lot of pro fights there, and having an extensive pro resume already. As he already has 23 pro fights, which is 2 more fights than Giles even has, okay, and almost the same age. But Giles is going to have to be crafty. He's going to have to get this fight down to the mat. I truly believe that. Prates opened up as a -210 favorite on my bookie. He's now a -250. the masses are in agreement with me here. They're seeing what I'm seeing. This dude's the truth, and wouldn't be surprised if Prates is a minus 350, 375 by the time this fight takes place. I think we're going to see heavy action continuously coming in on Prates, and I think he's going to deliver, and I think he's going to finish this fight, like I said, within the first 2 rounds. Of course, the fight game has changed so much throughout the years, and nowadays we don't see stylistic clashes the same way that we used to, right? With fighters coming from different backgrounds and really being more one-dimensional type of fighters. The fighters nowadays really do everything so well, just in compared to the old days. But this fight right here is just about as much as we're going to see as a stylistic clash, in the game these days. Rodolfo Vieira, the black belt hunter, one of the most high-caliber Brazilian jiu-jitsu players that have ever came into the UFC. Armen Petrosyan, not the most decorated kickboxer, but a fighter that his strength is really his kickboxing, right? Not to be confused with the late, great Armen Petrosyan, right? There was another Petrosyan who was a world-class kickboxer, if you remember him. He used to battle my boy Mike Zambides. But Petrosyan is a striker, has that kickboxing background, and he's came into the MMA world and has really relied on that. We saw him have a beautiful finish via strikes on Dana White's Contender Series that kicked off his UFC career after he knocked out Kolov, had a victory over Gregory Rodrigues, AJ Dobson, and Christian Leroy Duncan, the respectable CLD, who's an upcoming prospect in the game. The one loss that he had so far under the UFC banner was against Caio Borralho. That was a fight where he was taken down, and the takedown defense didn't hold up, and it cost him there. But he was able to survive and go to a decision. Now, if he's taken down against Vieira, that's going to be a problem, all right? There's a very strong likelihood that he can be subbed. I mean, Vieira is super dangerous there, and so he has to be on his P's and Q's there. I'm going to give you guys a little sneak peek. The line on this fight is basically pick 'em odds. So you're picking your poison here, which I'm going to say I feel more comfortable taking Armen Petrosyan, because if he's able to keep the fight standing, I mean, it's without a doubt he's gonna take this fight. He's gonna get the better of the striking. He may get a finish on the feet. I mean, there's not even a question. I think he's gonna outstrike Vieira. Vieira's gonna have to get this fight down to the mat. All right, so the pressure's on him to get it there. Petrosyan's been working on his takedown defense. Vieira doesn't have a wrestling background. He relies a lot on strength and whatnot. He's working on his technique there, but he relies a lot on his strength. And if he struggles to get the fight down to the mat, I just obviously don't see him winning the fight. And, maybe he does sneak in a takedown later on in the fight. And maybe Petrosyan's able to survive down on the mat, similarly to what he did against Caio. Maybe it's the end of the round. He can kind of stall and start back up on his feet in the next round, and where he will definitely be winning as the fight is standing. Okay, so I just feel a little bit more comfortable, and I just foresee Petrosyan keeping this fight standing where he's going to have that advantage without a doubt. But Rodolfo Vieira been working on his overall game. He just had that sub over Brundage, which we talked about how dangerous he is there. He showed evolution in his last 3 fights without a doubt. I mean, after he gassed out against Anthony Hernandez, his cardio has looked better and better. Against Stoltzfus, his cardio looked much better. Against Chris Curtis, we saw striking coming around, and he was actually kind of engaging in a little bit of a war, I guess you could say. But Chris Curtis was well ahead on the scorecards, in my opinion, as the fight took place standing. That was an official play that we cashed, and I think that Petrosyan will actually even look better on the feet than Chris Curtis did. Even though we're seeing Vieira grow there, Petrosyan will handle business on the feet. All right, so I like Armen Petrosyan, striker versus grappler. Can Petrosyan avoid going to the mat, especially early on, where he could potentially be subbed? And as of now, in Petrosyan's just 10-fight pro career, he has never been subbed. So, I don't know how much that's saying. Hasn't battled a lot of high-level grapplers. He's had some nice striking type of matchups, and Caio was the one fighter who... Caio, he's a good grappler, man, but he's not really a fight finisher, I would say, right? He stalls out and controls guys a lot down there. So give me Armen Petrosyan. As I mentioned, the line is essentially pick him. Petrosyan opened up as a plus 100. He's now minus 110. Very slight movement coming his way. And this is going to be... this is going to be a fight where people are going to be torn on, and some of you guys are going to say, oh, the grappler is going to get the better of the striker, or this is going to be the other way around, where you guys are going to feel confident in Petrosyan keeping the fight standing. So comment below, who do you guys got there? I want to know your guys' thoughts on that fight. In the middleweight division, we got Brad Tavares taking out Gregory Rodrigues. Brad Tavares coming off a W over the former champion of the division in Chris Weidman. Take things into consideration, though. Chris Weidman was injured in that fight, coming off a fight where he broke his leg in half, right? Snapped the bone. And Brad Tavares is outpointing him But Chris Weidman is still the guy just marching him down and looking to bring the fight. I really was not a fan of the performance there from Tavares. Tavares has really never been a fight finisher. I'm not really a fan of his style, man, if you want to be honest about it. I think he's finished 2 of his 15 victories in the UFC. All right, when you think about that, I mean, that really says who he is as a fighter. Out of 15 victories in the octagon, just 2 via finish. On the other hand, you have Gregory Rodrigues, who this guy's an absolute fight finisher. Out of 14 of his victories, 8 of them have come by way of KO. You would have thrown him in there with Chris Weidman. I think that you guys know how that fight would have went. All right. Gregory Rodrigues is a guy that's willing to go out on his shield. Now, that is something that it could be a little bit of a flaw in his game as well. We saw that on Dana White's Contender Series the first time around when he lost to Jordan Williams. That was a fight that he got way too overzealous, way too confident, marched forward, got hit with a counter, and eventually was finished due to strikes. We saw him recently knocked out by the absolute savage fight finisher, Bruno Ferreira. Big fan of his fight game right now. This guy's just an absolute fight finisher. And, Gregory did walk into a shot there. So the loss to Jordan Williams and then the loss to Bruno. But besides that, I mean, this is a guy that's been going out there handling business. The one lone loss besides that, we talked about it just recently, what the Armen Petrosyan split decision loss. He looked good in that fight. So a lot of people argued he won that fight anyway. Just knocked out Dennis Teolinen, took that fight down to the mat, showing how well-rounded he is using the grappling. Knocked out Chidi Njokuani, knocked out Julian Marquez. I mean, he's an absolute fight finisher and, trains at one of the best fight gyms out there. It's now called Team Killcliff, always changing the name, but he surrounds himself with champions. You see that Jason Jackson bumped into him at the Hard Rock Casino a little bit ago, chatted up with him real quickly, just wanted to let him know that I was a big fan of what he's been doing. And then that was before he took the belt, all right? I've been on to what he's been doing over there in Bellator. I mean, he's an absolute stud, one of the more underrated fighters in the game. If you guys remember him from back in the day from the Black Zillions versus American Top Team. And then Impa, of course, he's a champion now too, who was let go by the UFC, which he should have hung around. That was a bad move by the by the UFC. But just understand that Gregory surrounds himself with some of the best in the world. He's only 31 years old, while Brad Tavares is 36. But I will say that Gregory Rodrigues has taken a lot of damage. I think he spars hard, and he's taken some damage in his fights. So it's hard to really gauge like who's the more durable and fighter and who has more mileage left. Because Gregory Rodrigues, at times, man, when things aren't going his way, his body gives out, man. I think that he's been in some wars, but I think you have to lean his way. The 19 pro fights compared to 28 pro fights in Tavares. Tavares is just more of a fighter that plays it safe, so he hasn't taken as much damage, I would say. I mean, look at this. I mean, Gregory Rodrigues has absorbed 5.67 strikes per minute, while Tavares is absorbing 3.03. Defensively, Tavares is just a much more sound fighter, a much more safe fighter. Offensively, though, Gregory Rodrigues is landing 5.99 strikes compared to Tavares' 3.38. All right, so the numbers really do spell out what this fight is. All right, so I think Tavares is going to need to land a counter shot in this fight. All right, that's what I think. I think Gregory Rodrigues is going to be marching him down. He's going to be looking for a finish. He's going to be outpointing him. Tavares is going to look to land some heavy leg kicks, but this isn't an old injured Chris Weidman. This is a fresh killer in Gregory Rodrigues, and I think that Tavares might want to just throw some heavy overhand right counters as Gregory Rodrigues is coming in and just look to clip him and potentially finish him. I think he's going to have to step up the killer instinct in him. He's not going to want to hang around and try to outpoint Gregory Rodrigues because he's not. I don't see him winning a decision here, okay? Now, for Gregory Rodrigues, if he's going to get that finish that he always does look to get, Brad Tavares has been finished 4 times out of his 8 losses, right? So half of his losses have come by way of finish. So, I mean, this is a fighter, even though he's defensively sound, was just knocked out against Bruno Silva. That was in 2023 there. I mean, so we have seen him. We've seen age catch up to him. He was knocked out against Edmund Shabazian as well. All right. So I do think that Gregory can get a knockout here. I do. But as long as Gregory Rodrigues isn't hit with that shocking counter strike, Gregory gets his hand raised one way or another. Just be careful that his chin holds up for you if you're banking on him, because he's a pretty hefty favorite here. He's a -270. The line is flat, no movement as of now. I like Gregory Rodrigues to get the job done here. I hope some action starts to come in on Tavares and you can grab Rodrigues around like a 240. I would think it's a pretty solid parlay piece at that point, maybe a 250. Or for some of you guys that just feel eager to get in on this fight, maybe you're just grabbing it -270. I think Gregory shows up and he gets the job done here. Over to the co-main event. if you guys remember, this fight was actually one of the last fights added to this card, as Ige was supposed to be taking on Lerone Murphy, but Murphy did pull out of the fight, and in steps Andre Fili, who's coming off a huge victory where he just knocked out Lucas Almeida. That was a striking affair for as long as it lasted. Almeida started off decent in that fight, and Fili was just looking to land that big shot with his hands, and that's exactly what he did. Fili, just 33 years old. He's been around forever. The longtime Team Alpha Male product. A fighter that has now had 34 pro fights. All right. He has a world of experience. Ige has his own experience as well, with 24 fights in his back pocket. He's been in there with some of the best. He's taken his fair share of L's as well, but he's had some good W's. Coming off a tough loss against Bryce Mitchell, where the takedown defense did cost him. Before that, though, had a victory over Nate Landwehr and a big-time knockout victory over Damon Jackson. Losses to Movsar Evlovoyev, Josh Emmett, and the Korean Zombie before that. Knocked out Gavin Tucker before that. Once again, showing that he is dangerous on the feet, right? They call him Dynamite Dan, Dynamite 50K. I think he has a couple nicknames, right? Dynamite Dan, 50K Dan. I mean, this is a guy that has, I believe he may be a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but he's a fighter that really has power in his hands. And I could see these guys trading on the feet, and I could see either one of them landing a big shot that shakes this fight up. All right. Did lose a 5-round fight to Calvin Kattar. We know Kattar's a stud. So all of his losses, for the most part, respectable losses. The Korean Zombie one, you got to kind of keep an eye on that, because Korean Zombie did slow down towards the end of his career. And, I'm not, that one might be a little bit alarming to me. Andre Fili has his fair share of questionable losses, though, as well. Just lost to Nathaniel Wood, and that was a fight that was very close. I think it was going into the 3rd round, and he was taken down a little bit. He was controlled. And, who's going to get the better of the grappling in this fight, if it goes there, obviously could pay big dividends in this fight. And it's kind of hard to say, because Fili, like I said, he's been taken down. He's been controlled a little bit, even though he has some scrambling abilities and whatnot. Ige is a fighter that does have solid jiu-jitsu and whatnot, but we've seen him struggle against certain fighters where he's taken down and it's cost him fights. So I'm kind of curious to see who gets the better of those type of exchanges if it goes there. And I think I could say the same exact thing when we're talking about the striking exchanges. Both these guys could potentially land a big shot that ends the fight. Fili, a little bit more giraffe syndrome with his striking, but when he does land, there's some serious torque on it, as he's cocking back. He's long and lanky. Ige, I like the fact that he's a little bit more on the inside. He's a little bit more crisp with his striking, and I think he may be a little quicker to the shot there. Those heavy leg kicks as well. I think this fight's going to play out very closely. I'm very excited for this fight. And I've been very back and forth on it, if you guys can tell here. Since they've announced this fight, I've really been back and forth. I almost settled in with the dog pick on Andre Fili, but I think I'm leaning Ige's way. All right, if I'm going to be honest here, man. I think I'm going to lean Ige's way. Take a look at the betting line. Andre Fili opened up as a +142. He's now +145 as these books are starting to unravel this line here. Slight action coming Ige's way. I like the fact he was training for Murphy originally for this date. And I think that Ige can edge out a fight that's going to be close one way or another. All right, this is a close fight. I think the value is on Andre Fili. I think if you guys are looking for some value here, it's on Fili. And I want to see how these guys look at the stare downs. I want to see how they look fight week. And don't be shocked if you guys are following me on Instagram at MMA Fortune Teller _ if I may swap my pick over to Fili. I really want to see how Fili's looking, and I want to feel these guys out a little bit more. But I think the value is on Fili. But I think Ige, I have a gut feeling Ige is going to rise to the occasion and take this fight, though. Hey, guys, real quick, just want to throw it out to you. If you're looking to sign up to a new sportsbook, Bovada.lv is the sportsbook you guys know I recommend. Reach out to me. I will give you my referral link. You'll get an added bonus to your account. I'll help you navigate through this website. It's the best sportsbook out there. I love the way it's all designed, and just it's very aesthetically pleasing. Payouts are great. Everything's very smooth, and I'll help you guide yourself through this site if you're interested. And if you do sign up, you get a free month package to my official plays. All right, guys? So don't hesitate to reach out to me. And also, if you're just looking to work with me for my official plays, reach out to me and I'll send you over my pricing. Here we go. We got the main event taking place in the middleweight division. I'm very excited for this fight here. I'm a big Joseph Pyfer fan. I remember chatting it up with him through the Instagram DMs after he had that devastating injury on DWCS the first time around, which I'm going to circle back to that fight because, man, there's some gruesome details that come along with that injury. And I'm not even talking about from a physical standpoint. Joseph Pyfer's dad, man, that guy is one of the most disgusting human beings I've ever heard of in my life. All right, we'll circle back to that. But I remember just for whatever reason, I shot Joseph Pyfer a message through DMs after that, just saying, hold your head up, man. I'm excited to see you bounce back, whatever. He was cool. He responded back. And, he was on that determined mindset from back then. I remember whatever he said to me was something like, you already know it. I'm getting back on the horse. You already know I'm going to heal this up and I'm going to be back. That's exactly what he has done. He is an absolute fight finisher. He's an absolute treat to watch perform. This is a guy that's, as he said it best on Joe Rogan, on the Joe Rogan Experience, this is a guy that's looking to go out there and completely start you. He's looking to knock you out. He's a fight finisher. That's what he's looking to do. He's been training MMA since he was a very young kid. Ironically enough, it was his dad that put him in the sport. His dad, like I said, one of the most disgusting human beings I've ever heard. Like I said in the beginning, in the intro for this fight, Sean Strickland talked about everything he went through with his dad. We've been hearing a lot about that as of recently. The things I've heard Pyfer say were even more disgusting. But again, who knows the details of everybody, but his dad, was physically beating the crap out of him around 16. I think he finally packed his bags. He head out, never really talked to his dad since, except for when he had that brutal injury on DWCS, his dad had the nerve to message him through DMs, face down, ass up. I mean, think about how disgusting that is when you have a brutal injury like that. You're fighting for your dreams, and your dad messages you that. A guy that had a boxing background a little bit, was in the gym. He knows the sport. He knows how things go. He knows how excited Pyfer was for that opportunity. Think about how disgusting that is after not talking to your son for that long a period of time, and then to message him when he's down and out and try to kick him when he's down. I mean, what a despicable human. Joe Pyfer, man, he's a good dude, and I really want to see. I want to see him hold the belt one day. I think that what a story, what a background story that his dad, his dad's watching all this, and imagine his dad seeing his son, the champion of the world, knowing how he did him dirty and just watching his every move and seeing his son rise out of the ashes, man. Pyfer is the real deal. He's not a fighter that just has a bunch of momentum and is going to fizzle out. I think that he's the real deal. As I mentioned, a guy who's been training since he's a kid. When you have these career-long mixed martial artists, it pays major dividends. This guy, he talked about it on JRE. He's been around some of the best since he was a little kid, all right? This is a dude that's been surrounding himself with killers since he's a little kid, so he knows the environment, man. He knows what this is all about. He's prepared for the big stage, and I think that he's going to continue to rise. You see him getting in some work with Brendan Allen, who is also in the division and is chomping at the bit to fight for the belt. So Joseph Pyfer, he is peaking, not peaking at all, I shouldn't say that. He is rising towards his peak. Well, Jack Hermansson is without a doubt on the decline. I remember when I was grabbing Hermansson at dog odds back in the day. I remember when he defeated Jacare Souza. I was cage side for that fight. It was about 5 rows back. I was yelling stuff. You probably heard me on the TV. If you run that back, you'll probably hear me in the broadcast. Cashed in there. Hermansson used to rise up to the occasion often as a dog. I remember that, man. I forget if he was a dog against Branch, but just showing up time and time again in these fights over Lattis, Branch, Mearshart. And, without a doubt, a solid fighter. A fighter, especially coming from the European scene, had very good grappling for those standards. He came in and he's a legitimate grappler. His striking is active, but it's very clunky. I'm not a big fan of it. Joseph Pyfer will be way more smooth on the feet, and I expect Pyfer to land some big shots as long as the fight takes place there. Big, impactful shots, and I could see him getting a knockout in this fight. And just to take a look at what he's been doing as of recently, he just submitted Abdul Razak Al Hassan, just knocked out Gerald Mearshart. Had the knockout over Alan Amadovsky, a very low-level fighter, but in his UFC debut, had that knockout there. Had the bounce-back victory on DWCS, where he knocked out Ozzy Diaz, somewhat of a respectable fighter on the regional scene. And I think that Dustin Stoltzfus loss was a fluke, and I think that he would have had the victory if he didn't injure himself there as he tried to frame and put his arm. It was a bad move by him, but something that he says he's done in practice so many times, and just whatever reason in the fight, it gave out on him. I got Joseph Pyfer being the younger, fresher fighter, keeping this fight standing, avoiding anything tricky from Hermansson. Hermansson may search for a heel hook, something tricky down on the mat. I could see Pyfer following him down to the mat and getting a TKO, landing some heavy shots down there. And it's it's all about Pyfer right now in this main event, man. Pyfer gets this big victory. He's a ranked fighter. I want to see big fights coming up for him, and I want to see him snatch this belt. Let you guys know, man, that's the route I'm going with this dude's career. I want to see him become the champion, representing the United States. Obviously, I'm from the USA. Would love to see someone from the USA snatch that belt up. Obviously, Drakus, the new middleweight champion. This division is wide open. I think that Pyfer matches up with the top 5, top 10 middleweights perfectly. I think this is a very shallow division. You guys know I've been saying that for a long time, and I think that he could work himself right into the mix before eventually, I should say, let me not forget about my boy Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel, you know, he's the fighter that I'm really riding his coattails for him to come into that championship. He's the fighter I do want to see become the champ. Either Pyfer or Nickel. Those are two fighters I would really love to see snatch that belt. But you know, I think Pyfer will match up perfectly with fighters like Vettori, you know, an aging Whitaker down the line, you know, just some of these top guys. And again, I'm filming this before the winner of Amavov and Delize, that fight card, so I can't really talk about who won that fight, but I think he matches up perfectly with all these dudes here, and Pyfer is the truth. Mark my words, just 27 years old. Wait till you see how he's looking when he's 30, 31. To the betting line, over at my bookie, Pyfer opened up as a -230, went to a -210 line, dipped all the way down to a -260, and now it's settling in at a -240 line. So this line's tricky, a lot of ups and downs going on. I think that, you know, people just kind of wanting to see more from Pyfer before they're willing to give him, you know, a 2.5 to 1 type of line. It is a decently high line, but if you're in on Pyfer, if you're in on the hype and you think that he's going to deliver throughout his career and he's going to rise to the occasion, I mean, I don't see why you're hesitant on a -230, 220 type of line. Personally, I think I have been impressed with what I've seen from Hermansson. Again, that last performance that he just had, you know, getting up there in age, and just the way he was finished by Delize down on the mat, when that's really supposed to be one of his strong suits, is his grappling. The way he was finished down there, that wasn't a good look. And you know, I don't have a problem with anybody that's targeting Pyfer in a parlay or whatnot. You know, getting him 230 down and whatnot. Obviously, you want to get him more 210, 220. That's awesome. You know, maybe when it's 260, 285, 290, that's pushing it if it trends back that way. But I do not mind Pyfer in a parlay personally. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up UFC Vegas 86. A big thank you to all you guys that hang around throughout these entire videos and that hit that like button and are subscribed and catch me on all my social media. I really appreciate you guys. If anyone's looking to work with me, of course, you guys know I'm one message away. Reach out to me. I'll send you over my pricing. You know, we are getting hot right now, and we're looking to definitely capitalize on this card. I have some spots that I'm really liking. So if you want those spots and you want to work with me, reach out to me. And gotta leave you guys with some parting words. Of course, you know, we'll say this much. I won't go too much into it. Maybe at another card I'll go deeper into this. But just think about this. There's certain times in your life, man, where you go through challenging obstacles and you're much more appreciative of the small things. You're much more appreciative when life's going good. You understand that life's going good. All right. So for those of you guys that have had things going good for you for some time and you're getting a little spoiled and you're just thinking you're worried about small stuff and you're letting little things get to you, remember, there's things that could be going on that will completely change your life around and will have you really down and out. So if things are going smoothly, don't get caught up in the little petty stuff. Don't get caught up in some parasite that's trying to get you caught up in some drama over some stupid stuff when you could easily step to the side and just avoid all that and go watch the fights, go have a drink, or go exercise, watch the fights, do whatever makes you feel good. You chill out and you feel good and you enjoy life. You open that door, you feel the nice brisk air as we're in February now, depending where you're at though. That sun's hitting you. Go out for a nice little drive, go out to your local bar, go out to your local restaurant, enjoy yourself, count your blessings. All right, count your blessings. Understand right now, I know a lot of you guys right now, things are going so smoothly for you, and some of you guys aren't really fully appreciating it. I know some of you guys are also going through some tough times, and you're just wishing you could have some smooth sailing, right? You're looking down the road for that smooth sailing. I know how that is. Been there, man. Been going through ups and downs a lot throughout the last couple of years, and just appreciate your health, appreciate having your loved ones near you, appreciate just peace, and you know, there's peaceful things going around you, and don't look to get caught up in stupid drama. So I see it all the time, man, and it happens to people. When you don't have any type of drama going around and things are good, sometimes it's human nature to kind of create some type of drama or to look for those toxic type of things, because your body's always thinking that those types of things are supposed to be happening, because we evolved from way back down the line where there was always these crazy things going on every day, right? Living in a way type of different atmosphere, living, you know, being living out in the woods, looking for food and all that. And, you know, obviously you guys know what I'm talking about through evolution, and the times have changed a lot, but that innate stuff is still in the back of our mind. But tame that, enjoy the relaxation, take care of yourself. All right, guys? Hope you all have a profitable event. Much love to you all. Signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.